but at the same time, the Muslim Spain was the losing land in their mainland, so they didn't have the legacy of building upon, making colonies and getting deep into the Americas. But so the Christian Spanish did that, and so they didn't discover the Americas. The Viking discovered way before, but the people didn't know about it at the time. Well, most of the people didn't know about it at the time. The thing is, Muslims know about the Americas, and Christopher Columbus knows about the Americas, but the Spain and Christopher Columbus didn't only discover it. It was discovered before, but they acted upon it. They made colonies there, and they slowly but surely they expanded into it, and they got into business there, and they made powers there, and they overthrown the natives. So they acted upon it, and this action upon this knowledge and position of Spain there floating, having no much influence on it. There's no much people targeting it. Gave it a lot of legacy and what do you call it? A chance to put all of its resources and focus of making colonies. And Spain was the first to make colonies, then Portugal. So this is what happened. So this is the first point, which is very important: the New World, the resources of the New World, and so on and so forth. The other thing is, these superpowers of the Gunpowder empires, especially the Safavid Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire, were fighting each other's crazily, to a crazy level, just like how Russia, China, and USA nowadays. But nowadays we have the nuclear weapons, but these were going at a ham to it, and were very, very distracted by that, and a lot of their resources were wasted on that, and most of the times it ended in stalemate. In the beginning, the Ottoman Empire was annoyed as fuck at the really high level by the Safavid Empire. And the Safavid Empire proved to be really, really difficult task to do for the Ottomans because of the mountains, and because of some strategies that the Safavid applied. So the Ottoman Empire cannot go deep. It's really strange why the Ottoman Empire couldn't take over this Safavid Empire, because the Turks always managed to take control of this area. However, this time the Ottoman Empire couldn't. The Safavid Empire was part of the Seljuk Turks, but I don't know what's... explaining this requires a whole video, and it is strange. Even after the video, we still have a lot of questions, like it's weird. Anyway, there's a lot of historians, before the Russian become the Russian and challenge the Ottoman, the Safavid Empire is the one that slowed the Ottoman Empire from taking over Eastern and Central Europe. There's a historian from Germany. Is it Germany or from France? I forgot it. I think he's German. Anyway, he said that if it wasn't for the Shah, referring to the Safavid Empire, the Ottoman would have reached the Rhine River. And it's kind of true. The Safavid Empire slowed the Ottoman a lot. Very a lot. And they were annoying. And before the Safavid Empire, you have the Kingdom of Timur. The guy who's related to to Genghis Khan. And he did some horrible stuff as well, and his Islam is questioned because he killed so many Muslims, and yeah. Anyway, also slowed the Ottoman Empire a lot, and and therefore we gave the Ottoman Empire we know nowadays. So in Russia, in terms of Russia now, I want to talk. It's really good in defense, and it's really good in cold areas. Um, and was busy just fighting the Ottoman for most of the time. Sometimes the Safavid Empire, but mostly the Ottomans. A war after war, and the Russian just the Russian Empire. That's why it's kind of I don't. It shouldn't be totally included into the Gunpowder empires, because after it became the Russian Empire, that's it. That's the max what they can do. They reached their limit basically. Um, and they didn't try to have alliance with the Ming and give him moving or something. They didn't try to do something crazy, and they just kept going on annoying the Ottoman Empire, trying to break through the Ottoman line, but they couldn't. In terms of the Safavid Empire itself, well, they very limited, and they don't want the Ottoman and the Mughal unite against them. It will be their end. They will be doomed for sure. I don't know why that didn't happen. Seriously, there's no explanation for that. Um, there is an explanation, but it's a poor explanation, that the Mughal Empire wasn't completely a friend with the Ottoman, but they were on multiple levels, but not completely. And the Mughal Empire was chilling for a long time again, just like the Ming and the King, but like China, they were chilling a lot. Chilling is very dangerous in history. You shouldn't chill. If you chill, you're gonna be screwed. All right. And there's a concept that you need to learn, that money isn't everything. Well, money is kind of everything for superpowers after it's a little bit before World War One, but it's more clear, and you definitely can say that it is after World War One. Because of technology, of severe technology, a lot of technology, magnificent technology, money became very, very important. But before that, you just need a certain amount of money. Any more than that, it's just too much. Not necessarily will be necessary for better lives, but not necessary for having a better army. And the thing for that, as I said, is because of technology and thing. But before that, it doesn't mean you are rich, you are strong. It could mean that, but it's not necessary. It's not equal to. It's proportional, but not equal to. Um, the thing is, there's multiple examples in history of how, you know, strong warrior communities with strong soldiers, experienced generals, crush another very rich, very advanced empire in comparison. And the thing for that is simply because when a powerful nation chills, as I said before, like the generals and the soldiers lose experience. In fact, like when you have more than one generation that had no combat history to it, it's very dangerous. Somebody will come and crush you, and it doesn't require that much money, more than a certain limit, to rise an army and do some conquering. So there's a lot of examples in history of poor power crushing a rich power, because it doesn't mean you're rich, you're strong. Strength requires good soldiers, good generals, and good skills and skill sets, and being more nimble army. That's strength. Conquering is different from living good life, and having a lot of money to do a lot of things. It's different. An example of that is the first caliphate conquest of Persia and Byzantine Roman Empire. You have the beginning of the Mughal Empire, but leadership of Genghis Khan and Subutai. You have even Alexander the Great. They were a bit rich. They kind of comparable to the Persian Empire to some degree in the standards of back then, but there's still the money and the military capability of the Greeks still is no match in comparison to the great Persian Empire at the time. However, they still crushed it because of good soldiers and good generals that had a lot of experience. And they know their limits and they understand themselves because they tried it before. The Greek a bit strange because they are a smaller army with better equipment against a bigger army with a bit lesser equipment. But the Persian Empire had, that's I'm talking in terms of a soldier level. But the Persian Empire had, siege weapons and stuff like that, very complicated technologies, and still with the leadership of Alexandra, they just crushed them. So that's how the world back then operates, with a little bit of differences there and there, the more technology there is. At the time of these powers, they got really they have been overrun by Europe for few reasons. Most of it is due to the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was really busy fighting not fighting Russia, fighting the Safavid Empire, maintaining control in the Indian Ocean. Plus, you have the New World, and on top of that, in a way or another, entire of Europe or rest of Europe was against the Ottoman Empire. And Austro-Hungary was supported by the Pope and the Holy Roman Empire and the Italian states. In the meantime, while that the Ottoman Empire cannot attack Spain because of Morocco and a little bit to Algeria, but Morocco, the Ottoman Empire could have took down the mainland Spain and Portugal, and nobody would have stopped it from that if they would overthrow Morocco and attack through land and sea through the Gibraltar. And the land powers, the land battles capability of Spain and Portugal are really poor in comparison of the mighty Ottoman Empire. They barely match themselves against Morocco and several states there and there. They barely managed themselves against Morocco, and many times they tried to overthrow Morocco and they failed. And also they didn't have a large army as much as the Moroccans. The largest Moroccan army with a lot of mercenaries from Africa reached to up to 250,000. And that's something that Spain would never match up with. However, Moroccan lacked the naval capability to cross Gibraltar, plus they lacked information. But the Ottoman Empire didn't lack that. If the Spain barely managed to suffer against Morocco, if the Ottoman Empire overthrew Morocco, which they could pretty damn easily, but they chose not to, that's part of the chilling part that I'm gonna talk about a little bit. The other thing is so they could have overthrown Spain and Portugal, but they didn't. So Spain and Portugal through the sea, they had a decent navy. It's right after the Ottoman Empire. Yes, there's a big gap between the Ottoman Navy and the Spanish and the Portuguese navies combined. However, it was decent, and because it is very far away, and as I said, Ottoman Empire was fighting on the entire of Europe, and if they want to invade Spain through the sea. They need all of their navy. It wouldn't be practical, but even if they send a gigantic fleet, it will be intercepted by all the ships of Europe in the Mediterranean, and everyone else will be scared, even if they tell them we're targeting Spain, but Spain will have time to prepare. It's kind of impossible by the mechanisms and this way it is back in the days. So the only way to take over Spain and Portugal is through Morocco. And so Spain and Portugal is very much nobody can conquer. In terms of the north, another European nation taking over it, that's impossible because of the mountains, the Alps mountains. Also, the Spain made a lot of bases there for defense, a lot of castles there, and fortifications and traps. It's even more impossible to conquer Spain through it and be ready for it. At least these defenses will slow you a lot down and tire your army and waste the resources. So when you met with the main Spanish army, you're gonna be screwed. So Spain and Portugal are pretty much safe, and because of that, they focused a lot on the New World. But in the same time, while the Ottoman Empire is fighting Russia, fighting the Safavid Empire, trying to reach Vienna, fighting the rest of Europe, Italian states, competing in the oceans and competing in the Mediterranean Sea, competing in trade with Venice, on and on, trying to take Sicily, doing some politics and doing a lot of complicated stuff. And the forces was stretched out wide and thin, and they fighting all over the place, all simultaneously, and very much they are fighting three-sided war. Meantime, Spain and Portugal opened a fourth side to fight in, and they were competing in Indonesia and trying to make colonies in India and south of the Arabian Peninsula and Somalia. So the Ottoman Empire Navy had to fight there as well. And actually the Ottoman Empire defended the Mughal Empire and fought with the Mughal Empire against Spain and Portugal. The thing is, Ottoman Empire had the chance within these times to colonize the Mughal Empire, but they didn't. That's again another chance that the Ottomans missed on, and they just defended with the Mughal Empire against Spain and Portugal. The thing is, Ottoman Empire cannot attack Spain and Portugal directly, nor India can, even though they're richer and more powerful. But the Spain and Portugal kept on trying, kept on harassing. Plus, they're using the resources from the New World to support their economy, trying to do this goal, and it continued for a very long time. They kept pushing, a little bit by a little bit. In the long run, it failed. Then the Dutch came in, and they kept trying, and they had, because of, the Ottoman Empire was stretched wide and thin. The Mughal Empire didn't have a good navy, but it's very powerful on land. So the Dutch didn't go that much, but the Dutch managed to do some good business stuff, military business in Indonesia. Ottoman Empire was getting tired from defending stuff in the Indian Ocean. And you know what Dutch is? It's north of Spain, north of France. Like literally, the Ottoman Empire cannot even send one ship there. The Dutch were just keeping harassing, keep trying, keep knocking on the door, and the Ottoman Empire was trying to stop them from doing that, fighting them off. It's like how fighting off a bee or a fly that keep annoying you while you're still doing a math class, while you're doing a math test or doing a math homework. Imagine you have another two, they work together in a conjunction, which is Spain and Portugal. Meantime, Ottoman Empire is dealing with Russia, dealing with the Safavid, and fighting, and from time to time fighting as well Austria-Hungary, trying to take down Vienna, the Polish and the Holy Roman Empire and the Italian state, competing with Venice in the Mediterranean. It's a mess. They fighting everywhere and they stretched wide and thin. They kept knocking on until the Dutch managed to do some success. Unlike Spain and Portugal, where the Ottoman was fresh, now they're getting weaker and weaker. The Ottoman Empire wasn't totally fighting entire Europe at once, but at some point, like in the rest of Europe, the entire rest of Europe are an enemy of the Ottoman Empire. At some point, one of these powers have fought the Ottoman Empire, an exception for France. So it's very much the enemy of the entire European power. But after the siege of Vienna, there's something called the Holy League, which most of Europe uniting together and fighting as one army against the Ottoman Empire, which drove the Ottoman Empire a little bit back and had a lot of pressure. That's it. More pressure on the European front, while the Ottoman Empire has the Russian front and the Safavid front. Sometimes the Safavid Empire and the Russian Empire will communicate together, cooperate to attack the Ottoman Empire at once, and the Ottoman Empire stood solid. However, they keep doing that against the Ottoman Empire. Plus, how long the Ottoman Empire will last while maintaining other stuff, and they're still trying to maintain power in the Indian Ocean. They're pushing for it. The Mughal Empire still didn't develop its own powerful navy to defend itself for some reason. They could, but bad leadership and whatnot. So basically this is the story, and this has kept going on until the British came to the picture.